Hi everyone, it's Marco Brown. I'm a divorce attorney here in Salt Lake. I wanted to kind of talk to you today a little bit about divorce and infertility. This is something I see pretty often in my office. We've helped 3,000 plus people through this process, so we've seen a lot of things, and we've seen a lot of infertility and divorce. The data I've seen over time, and not just from my experience, but from other academic papers and surveys, is that people with infertility problems in a marriage tend to get divorced at a higher rate. And I think the reason for this, a couple of reasons. One is you have that kind of dashed expectations, right? You get married, you think I'm gonna have a whole bunch of kids, or I'm gonna have 2 kids or whatnot, and you can't have any kids. So that dashes your expectations. And that's hard to deal with. And the other thing is it just creates huge amounts of stress between a couple. You have people who want to get pregnant, want to have kids, and they can't. You spend a lot of money trying to do these things. It just creates a lot of stress. And when you create undue stress on a marriage, people tend to get divorced. This is just kind of how this works. So I think there's probably more to it than that, but those are a couple major things really going on in this dynamic that leads to people getting divorced at a higher rate when they're dealing with infertility. And I can tell you, I understand this. We've dealt with infertility in our marriage, my wife and I, for a long time. Actually, we've been married, 19 years, I think. And for the first while, we were infertile. We were never able to figure it out. We adopted our first son. He's 12. And we loved that process of adoption, but I can tell you, it never takes the pain away of infertility. The way I dealt with it personally was that I just assumed very early on we'd never be able to have kids, and I dealt with things emotionally and spiritually on that level, because that's how I tend to deal with problems. Is what's the worst case scenario, and I get used to that. But my wife that never really took with her, and about every 6 months, it would kind of come back. And we would deal with it again, and it created a lot of stress over the years. Eventually, we got to a place where we were able to do IVF. We tried everything else, artificial insemination, I don't know how many times, everything under the sun, scientifically and religiously, to have babies, and nothing worked. Tons of stress, and we finally got ourselves to a place after we had paid off a lot of debt and gone through our kind of debt story, where we were able to go through IVF at a very good and reputable place here in Utah, and it took the first time actually that we did it. So we did it with my wife's egg and my sperm, and there was not a good chance of that happening. So we were very excited. Then things didn't go well. It was ectopic, so it ended up in a fallopian tube, and we had to terminate. We had to take out the fallopian tube because my wife was about to die. She was about to bleed into her abdomen, and that was very, very difficult. That was probably the worst experience I've had in my entire life, because I was scared to death that my wife was going to die. So we'd gone from this real high to this very serious low in a very short amount of time, and that creates huge amounts of stress. So after that first experience that didn't go so well, my wife and I got together, and I was just done. I was completely and totally done. Didn't want to do it again. We spent about 6 months talking, and my wife convinced me that we should try again, which was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made in my entire life, because I was so against it. But we did it. And this time we used an egg donor. It worked. I was amazed that it took, but it totally worked. And my wife had a great pregnancy, no complications, nothing, and we had a baby. So now we have a 12-year-old and a 22-month-old, 23-month-old. Yeah, I think he's 22 months at this point, but great kids. But I can tell you that we're lucky. We have a very good relationship. I'm a lawyer. We make okay money. We have a good life, and it's created a tremendous amount of stress on us. So I understand when people go through this process of infertility and then getting a divorce, how it could lead to that, especially if you just can't have babies and you have those dashed expectations. It's a very, very difficult process. What I can tell you is that adoption is a fantastic option. I'm a total evangelical for it. And like I said, it doesn't take away the pain of infertility itself, but there's something to be said for having a baby and being able to raise a child. So that's something you can certainly look at if you have infertility issues. And then the other thing is, if it's that meaningful to you to have a kid, then do everything you possibly can to go through all of the options: artificial insemination, any of the drugs that you can possibly think of, IVF, anything like that. I don't advocate going into debt for these things because I don't advocate going into debt in general, but do everything you can, work as much as you can to pay for anything that will produce a baby, and do anything you can to do it. I know there's surrogacy out there as well. I'm not the biggest fan of surrogacy. I think it's a little odd, but that's just me personally. I know tons of people who've done it, and it's utterly fantastic for them. That's your deal. Absolutely go for it. That usually costs on the order of $50,000 to $70,000 if I'm thinking about it correctly. Those are the numbers I've heard. So it's very expensive. It's probably the most expensive way to go. So you can think through that. On the adoption side, you can think through foster care. That's actually the least expensive way to adopt a child. And then private placement is going to be a bit more expensive than that, but still fairly inexpensive. When you do an agency adoption, at least here in Utah, that's usually somewhere between 28. The numbers I've seen is 28 and 40,000. So it's a lot. But again, if you need a baby and you're willing to make that sacrifice, and you can handle the adoption process, it is great. And I'll talk another time about our adoption story, because it's kind of it's an interesting one. There were a lot of ups and downs with that as well, but adoption is a fantastic option for people out there. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about infertility and divorce. Really, if you can make your marriage work, just deal with the stress of infertility, make it work, do everything you possibly can. If you're to that point though, where things are irretrievably broken and the stress has caused other things, you just need to get a divorce, you can always call us and we can help you through this process. It's what we do all day long. We focus exclusively on divorce. So you can give us a call at 801-685-9999. Check us out on the web, www.utdivorceattorney.com. Lots of resources there as well, 400,000 plus words of content on our website and tons of videos, as you can see. And if you do need help, just give us a call. We'll get you through it. Not, stay together, do everything you can to have a good, strong marriage, and find that baby, get that baby any way you can. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.